Sure.
Welcome to the monthly RELO Bangkok AUA webinar. My name is Trisha Smith-Pierce and I'll be hosting the webinar tonight. I'd like to welcome Ms. Loren Lee Chiesi. Hope I said that right. She's a fellow with the U.S. Department of, an English language fellow with the U.S. Department of State, and she is currently in Burma at Naypyidaw. Anyway, Loren will be sharing some strategies on how to effectively communicate with students, coworkers, and administrators. So we have questions that you can put in the Q&A box, please, and we'll address them as we go along or at the end, whichever is appropriate in the situation. So please make sure also to set your attendees to all panelists and attendees so that we can all see what everybody's saying. Loren, take it away. We're excited to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. Thank you all for attending. I'm very happy to be here this evening with you. As Trisha mentioned, I will be talking about effective communication tools for cross-cultural teaching. So let us begin. Or not. The first thing I wanted to talk about was my source material. I use the book, How to Communicate Effectively and Handle Difficult People. It's by Preston C. I got this book about 5 years ago, and it's a very short, quick read, only about 65 pages, but the material in it is actually quite illuminating. It's really practical, useful tips on how you can use language and a couple quick steps to make having a difficult conversation or a conversation that you need to be clear, professional, and direct more effective, right, as it says right in the title. And I would highly suggest finding a copy online. There's lots of PDF versions available, or you can contact me after this and I will be more than happy to send you a PDF. The first thing I want to talk about is the fundamental human rights, because these are expectations we have for communication, how we expect to be treated, what we want others to treat us like, and how we can interact with other people. So one of the first ones is the right to be treated with respect. I think this is the foundation of effective communication, is coming at a place where you're treating the person or the people you're talking to with respect. The right to express our feelings, opinions, and wants. This one is critical to effective communication because you have to believe that your feelings and opinions and your wants are important and valuable. And it's also good to keep in mind that other people's feelings, opinions, and wants are important and valuable to them. The right to be listened to and taken seriously. Everyone has the right to share their voice. You don't have to agree with the people, but it's important to take them seriously, especially if you're having a hard conversation, a difficult conversation, because the person is coming to you with a serious inquiry or a serious problem, or you're coming to somebody else with a serious inquiry and problem. The right to set your own priorities. This is great as we talk about boundaries later on in the presentation. Your priorities are important and you have the right to them. The right to say no without feeling guilty. This one is really important to me. I grew up with the disease to please. I used to, and still do in some capacities because it lingers. I get nervous saying no. I feel guilty when I have to say no, or that something doesn't work for me. So getting these effective communication strategies really changed the way I related to being able to say no and feel empowered to do it. Also, in some cultures, saying no isn't appropriate. People don't say no directly. They use hedging or other types of circumlocution to get around saying no. So in this, we're going to talk about the importance of saying no and why, when and why it's important to be able to set boundaries. The right to get what we pay for. As a teacher, your students and colleagues and administrators deserve to get the best from you as you're a paid professional, and you deserve to get the best from other people as a paid professional. And somebody that you're working with or dealing with, especially in a paid capacity as a professional, you deserve to get the best you can for what you're paying for. You have the right to your opinions to differ from other people's. Everyone has different ways of coming into and observing the world. We all have different perspectives, different ways of being, and that gives us all different opinions. And we all have the right to have differing opinions. Although I don't think that objective facts are different, I do think that opinions are important. And being able to reach out and try to look at something from somebody else's side is very important. The right to take care of and protect ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. Again, this is one of the fundamental foundation parts of effective communication. You have the right to your physical, mental, and emotional health. So using these techniques, you can give yourself a little bit of self-empowerment to feel mentally and emotionally stable when having conversations that do rattle you, that make you uncomfortable, or that you're nervous will make someone else feel uncomfortable. So the first thing we're going to start off with is a multi-choice poll. Which are your most common communication conflicts as a teacher? You can choose more than one here.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll now. So if everyone could go ahead and type in what they think.
So we have conflicts between students and teachers, conflicts between teachers, and for this I mean maybe yourself and other faculty members, conflicts between teachers and administrators, and conflicts between teachers and parents. So again, it's multi-choice. Feel free to check as many as are applicable.
Okay, the votes are coming in quickly, but we'll give it like 30 seconds longer. Okay, it looks as of right now, conflicts between students and teachers is winning. I don't know if that's a win though, if you say it that way, but it's getting the most votes. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
Okay, about 10 more seconds, everybody. If you could all vote, that would be great. So we can know what's going on with you. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now, since it looks like it has slowed down a little bit. And I'll share it with everyone. Thank you for everyone that was able to participate. Okay. Here are our results. So it looks like number one, conflicts between students and teachers at 73%. That's quite a margin. I mean, granted, they could do two if they wanted, but still that's so high. That says something.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that we'll be talking about that later on in the presentation.
Okay, excellent. I'll stop sharing that now and we'll go forward.
I also agree that one of my biggest conflicts is between students and teachers. I think it's probably why I put it first, because it's the one that came up in my mind first. I also often feel like I have to have hard conversations between myself as a teacher and administrators at times, especially if it's over things like scheduling or working with another teacher and having to bring in an administrator. So I've had different conflicts in that capacity too. And it's always hard and it's always difficult. And learning these strategies really helped me feel confident in those types of dialogues. Before we start talking about effective communication, I want to just review some aspects of communication that are ineffective. So ineffective communication causes conflict and defensiveness. People often feel worried or ashamed or upset or frustrated when you start a conversation using ineffective communication. They can immediately tell that there's going to be a rift or a conflict coming up. So let's look at some examples. Using you language, saying things like, you need to do this now, you should behave like this. These are definitely putting the person ahead of your actual problem or your topic of what you want to talk about. The second one is using directives. So any sort of command language, statements that invite a no response or cause disagreements and conflict. You have to understand my position. You must follow my advice. You should do this way. Using directive language leads people to believe that there's no room for their opinion. And it also causes people, like I said earlier, to be on edge or prepared to disagree with you immediately. So instead of coming from a collaborative place, they're feeling more like a child, like their opinions aren't taken seriously. And the next one, using universal statements. This is the one that gets me in trouble sometimes and the one I have to work on the most in my life. Now, granted, it doesn't come up as much in a professional setting, but in my everyday life or talking with my husband, when we have conflicts, I use universal statements. And universal statements are any statement that generalizes a character or a behavior in a negative way. So saying things like, you always leave early from classes, you never do this, you're messing things up again. Anytime you make a statement that is general, large, all-encompassing, is immediately not only negative, but wrong. And why? Because when you use universal statements, you are easily discounted by one counterexample. For example, if you tell somebody you always leave early from your classes, all they have to do is mention one time where they didn't. Oh, well, last Tuesday, I stayed the entire time, and I spent some time talking with the students afterward. There you go. All of a sudden, your argument is lost, and you're not connecting with the topic. Also, it attacks the person's character and not their actions. And what you want to do is attack the behavior, not the person. Stay hard on the topic and not on the character. And that's the best way. Let's talk about that more. So, which ineffective communication do you use most? I want you to think about what we just went over, and I want a little bit of feedback from you after hearing that.
Okay, I just launched the poll. I would say for me, I'll just share what I do, is I use directives. And maybe it's because I have children, I don't know, but I'm just like, you will do this, you will do that. And I really, after seeing your presentation and your PowerPoint, I've really been like kind of reflecting on that and thinking, oh, you should change that. I mean, there are times when it's appropriate, of course.
Absolutely.
But I use it far more than that. Let's see what we've got here. Where people are still responding. And wow, it's pretty evenly split.
That's good. So that means everyone has a little bit to learn on how that they can change up those behaviors from this. Yeah, I agree with you. There's definitely times where using direct language is important, like emergency situations. Move over, get out of the way. Those are really important times when imminent danger is befalling you. But other times it's really important to just make sure that you're giving advice more than a directive.
Okay, it looks like our polling has slowed down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and end this. If anyone, I think Loren mentioned this, but if anyone has any explanations they would like to add to this, they can put that in the chat box. But I'll share the poll here. So it looks like at the end we had our using you language as, I guess, the winner, as the one that came out the most. I personally find that kind of interesting, if I can add that in there, is because I have noticed, like when I interact with people, that is one thing that is occurs a lot of, you did this, and you. So that one makes sense to me.
Yeah, and really what you want to go for is the thing that they're doing, not them. Because most of the time it's not them as a whole, as a holistic unit, but more what they're doing in the moment. Yeah. Great. So let's move on a little bit. I also like the 3 people that had mentioned that they communicate perfectly always. That's very valuable. Please give me advice in the chat box then, because I can always use advice. So communicating effectively, how to be soft on the person. So one of the main themes in the book was the idea of being soft on the person, hard on the issue. And what does that mean? So Ways you can be soft on the person but hard on the issue is making sure at the outset of your communication to affirm the other person. Things like, you're a good student, yet I've noticed you've been coming to class late. Again, you're putting the person, from the very start, you're saying, you're a good student. I noticed that you're a good student. You're a good colleague. Yeah, I've noticed recently you have not answered emails quickly. Those are really great ways to lead in and just let the other person know that this is a small thing that you've noticed, and in general, you still believe in them, you see their good sides, and that's really important when you're trying to address a difficult topic. Affirm your relationship. This is something that can be very important to people, as a lot of times people, when they get into conflict, worry that if they bring anything up, it'll sour their relationship with somebody, and the relationship is really important. So instead of saying something is bothering them, they'll harbor it. So make sure that you affirm your relationship with the person. We've been great coworkers for over 2 years now, but now that we're working on this project, I've noticed some difficulties. When you start from the outset, just telling the person that we have a great relationship, that things are going well, that really helps to assuage any fears that this small little blip or this conflict is going to sour or end the relationship. Another thing you can do is validate feelings. So when I say validate feelings, I mean telling the person that you see how they're feeling and you noticed it and you realize that it's problematic. So I can see you're not happy with decision. I can see you're frustrated by what was mentioned earlier. I can see this is not going well. Also, when you do things like that, it invites a discussion for the other person to clear up how they're feeling. Because when you say, I can see you're not happy with the decision, they can come back and say, it's not that I'm not happy with it, it's this. And then again, you're starting to communicate effectively. You're starting to get at the bottom of what that person's actually feeling, and that's going to bring a lot of clarity to the situation. Speak towards common goals. This is another great tip that I think people don't utilize enough. I know I didn't before I started reading the book, and now it's one that I use often. If I'm working with a person that I haven't worked with a lot, or someone that I already have a relationship that is maybe a little bit more conflict-based in general, we just have different personalities, or our personalities are too similar, so we're kind of attacking it at the same angle, it's really good to speak towards the goal. So in this situation, I give the example, we both want this presentation to go well, so how can we collaborate better moving forward? Using the goal as the main objective helps to put the other person at ease and realize this is what we're working on, this is what's important, what can we do to open it up to make this thing, the issue, better. So right now we're going to do some communication check-ins. So what would be the best rephrase for this ineffective communication? The example I have is, you're wrong. And then I brought up 3 ideas, and I'd like to hear what you think is the best choice.
Okay, I just launched the poll for that, so people can chime in and vote. We do have one comment in the chat box that I'll share while people are voting. Tanya said, it seems to me that effective communication is when using positive feedback with the students, bringing up the idea that being positive and is a part of the effective communication. So I thought I would share what she mentioned.
I think Tanya is right. A lot of it is starting just from a positive place, or finding the most positive aspect of the situation and highlighting that, focusing on that instead of focusing on the negative parts.
Like your example before where you said, we both want this presentation to go well. Like that's, to me, that's even that is focusing on the positive, because you're saying we have a goal in mind. Let's focus on that, not what's going on, whatever is the problem necessarily. You know, I mean, it is focusing on the problem, but you're saying you're moving it like forward rather than accusing or being negative to the other person.
Yeah. Topic first, be really clear and effective about the topic first, and soft on the person.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. We've got a number of people have voted, and I will share the results, see what we think here.
We've got a nice variety of results. This is great. But it looks like the question number 3 has edged out the others. So let's check in and see what the correct communication would be, or the best choice.
Okay, I'll stop sharing the poll.
So actually, the best rephrase for effective communication here would be number 2. In the first one, your idea seems flawed. I have another idea. You're starting first with a you statement, your idea, and seems flawed. You're engaging the negative directly. I have another idea is also making it seem like your idea might be better, and putting their idea and the value of that above your own idea and the value of it above others. Number 3, I like your idea, but I have a better idea. Again, you're saying that you like their idea, but then saying you have a better one already puts it into conflict. If you look at number 2, it's much more equal. I hear what you're saying. I have another idea. So you're validating what the person has said. You've mentioned, I've heard it. And you're also then just bringing in another topic. And you're very equal about that topic. Very neutral. I have another idea. Just another point to bring up. That's great. We're going to do another communication check-in. So what would be the best rephrase for this ineffective communication? You never do your work on time. You're lazy. So please look at these 3 examples and vote in the polls.
Okay, I just launched the poll, so let's see how we end up with here.
So from what I see, it seems that it's the same choices as before. If you look at the poll, in my poll, it says it's the same question.
Oh. Ooh, you're right. Hang on. I think I might not have changed the poll. Sorry about that. Okay. Or you know what? I messed up on that one. I am sorry, everyone. So why don't you write in the chat box? When I was putting these in, I must have went to check-in number 1 instead of check-in number 2 when I did it. So we've got a vote for number 3. Anyone else want to put their answers in the chat box? Sorry for messing that up for you, Loren.
It's okay. At least we have another way of doing it.
Yes, that's great.
Equally as effective.
Yes. So how about number 3? People are thinking maybe number 3.
Yeah. All right. So let's look into it. So for this one, you never do your work on time, you're lazy. That statement is all full of problems. You never do your work. It's starting off with a you statement, then never, a generalization, and then you're criticizing the other person and calling them lazy. So that's pretty general, that's pretty divisive statement. So if you look at number 1, your work is late, can I help you? That's a tough one. You're saying that the work is late and you're starting off with that. That's going to make people feel defensive. And then offering up, can I help you immediately? That not only assumes that there is a problem, but it also, you're rushing in to help. And what you want to try to not do in situations where there's conflict is share your abilities, your time, your efforts right from the beginning. You want to make sure that you come in feeling empowered and you get to all the evidence first before you know what you're volunteering for, because you might not be able to help, or it might be a situation where you're not willing to help and you don't want to volunteer that up front. Number 2, I've noticed you haven't submitted your work yet. Do you have a problem? Again, the first part isn't necessarily that bad. It's just mentioning that you've noticed that something hasn't happened. But the second part, do you have a problem? Even though it's minor, you're insinuating with that question that there is a problem. The person might not even realize there's a problem yet. Number 3 is probably the best here. I noticed you haven't submitted your work yet. Is there a problem? Asking the person, is there a problem, gives them a chance to reflect and to tell you if something's happening. Then from there, you can have a discussion about what the problem is, and you can see if you want to volunteer to help them. The next person. The next thing we're going to talk about is I statements. I statements are really wonderful and effective when you're having effective communication with another person, because you're putting your own visions, your own thoughts, your own opinions ahead of the accusation, the question, the conflict. And it's usually you're saying a statement that is an opinion statement. So if you look at these list of opinion statements, what are the ones that you feel like you use the most?
Okay, I just launched the poll for everyone to take a vote.
This is a multi-choice poll, so you can click as many as you want to.
Excellent. Looks like I think is far and away the winner as people are voting here. We'll see what ends up happening. I know for me, I use I would like a lot. I would like this to happen. I would like, I don't know why. I think it's because I've gotten out of the habit of using I think and like my writing, you know, because like when I used to write research papers, I would say, I think this. And then I think I just had I had so many teachers say, get out the I think stated as evidence. If you've got the evidence to support it, then just have it be that. So. Yeah,
but when we're talking, it's often,
it's in a completely different context, but I think because of that, I've completely taken it out of my repertoire. But I think is far and away the most used in our group. So I will end the poll and I will share it so everybody else can see.
Great, thank you. Yes, wow, 83%, that's amazing. I've also noticed that there's a lot of people that mentioned I would like. I happen to use this one a lot too. And the one I use a lot is I prefer. I say I prefer, and I talk about my feelings a lot, so I feel is a big one for me. Let's move on to I statements. So practice using I statements. A coworker hands in part of her work late. One of the things that you can say is, it's important to me that, I believe that. Things like this help you to start off the conversation so that you're putting the belief statement in your side of the conversation. It's important to me that we hand the work in on time. How can we get your work in on time is a good way of handling that. It's important to me that we submit the work on time. I like to hand my work in early so that everyone has the document or the project on time. Anything like that is really a great way to hedge a difficult conversation. Number 2, your director tells you that you need to teach more class hours. This has happened to me before. And how I would phrase something like that would be, I prefer that I have the opportunity to have extra time off, or I prefer that you talk to another teacher first as my schedule is very busy. Instead of just saying no or immediately saying yes, explain where you're coming from and talk about what your preferences would be in that situation. A student thinks that he's been graded unfairly. I would appreciate if you could come to my office hours. I prefer that you bring your assignment in so we can discuss it. I see what you're saying and I would like to help you review it. These are all ways that you can start the communication so that the ball is in your court, as we say, and start off with your opinions and your thoughts coming first instead of going to a you statement. Your work is late. You know I can't teach extra hours. I always get chosen to teach extra hours. You need to review your work. I don't think that you've been graded unfairly. Different things like that are less effective. We're going to move into evidence-based responses. So I statements tend to invite discussion. They have the people ask why something is. If you state a preference, like I prefer to hand in my work early, if not on time, the person might say why, or I don't work like that. So you might need to use a more evidence-based response in this approach as the discussion evolves. So how do you get evidence? The first thing you do is get clear about the situation. Find out what happened. What's going on? What's the source of the conflict? Then get your facts. Know all different aspects of what happened in the situation. This is things like ask the person to explain their side of the story, see where they're coming from, see how they feel about different things, understand the dates, the times, how everything happened. And then be really specific about your communication and make sure you're communicating about the issue and not the person or their behavior. So we're going to look at some examples. So now Trisha and I are going to do a little bit of a dialogue, practicing using I statements. So the conflict at hand here is a coworker hands in her part of the work late.
Okay. It's important to me that we deliver a report on time. Can you please tell me when I will receive your work?
Ooh, I'm sorry. My son was sick last night and I had to care for him. I can get that to you by 5 p.m.
Oh, I understand your situation. Please email our director, explain your situation, and let her know that you will send the work to me by 5 p.m.
Yeah. So, and thank you very much. So in this situation, it was really good that the coworker was given the opportunity to explain why her work was late. And in the very beginning, the teacher who is starting the difficult conversation is explaining what's important to her. It's important that we deliver the report on time. It's what I prefer. It's her preference. It's what makes her feel comfortable. And when she gets the information, she reaffirms the person and says, I understand where you're coming from. A lot of people, if they're in a situation like that, where they already have a child that's sick and they're having a rough day, just being able to say something like, I understand your situation really helps. Then the teacher very clearly says what she needs from the other person. So please email our director. Again, just saying please is a nice way to do that. Explain your situation and let her know that you'll send the work. The person's being extremely clear, telling the person exactly what their expectations are and making sure that that's going to be okay with the other person. And since the coworker already mentioned that they will be able to get it to the teacher by 5 p.m., this is a reasonable request. We're going to look at another one. So this conflict is a student, and he thinks he's been graded unfairly.
Okay. I would appreciate it if you could show me the problem with your exam. I would like to see it.
I can't. I lost my exam sheet.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's my policy to only review grades for students when I can see the original exam. Please keep track of your exams in the future.
Again, a similar type situation. The teacher immediately starts out with saying that she would like to see the exam. When the student cannot produce the exam, the first thing she says is, I'm sorry to hear that. So explain to the student that you're sorry that this happened. It's unfortunate. You can see that the situation is difficult for them. And then she very clearly goes into what her policy is. The policy is very clear. She only reviews grades for student when she can see the original exam. And that's a very fair statement. Then she just tells the student of what the expectations are moving forward in the future if he wants his grades to be reviewed or if there's a disagreement about grades. So the next thing we're going to talk about is using evidence, what you can get from the other person in the conflict situation, and consequences. And this is where you're willing to negotiate a little bit in your difficult conversation. So most of the times, conflicts will be resolved when the parties can discuss the evidence. That's what we just saw in those last two dialogues. There's a situation, you get a little bit more insight, a little bit more information, you get your facts, you see what the problems are, you've been specific. However, sometimes you may need to use consequences. Consequence is what you're willing to do given any situation. So this is what you are willing to allow, or a boundary you're willing to set with another person in order to resolve a conflict. So a communication of a good consequence is one that offers a choice. Choice is really important. When you offer somebody a choice inside your boundary, it gives them agency and makes them feel that they are included in the resolution process. It's not something that's being commanded. It's not something that is being dictated. Instead, it is something that they are an active participant in. So,
Loren, can I ask a quick question about that?
Sure.
So when you say offer a choice, do you have like any direction on how many choices? Like to me, because I always think one or the other, but have you found maybe 3 choices are better, or does it not matter necessarily?
I think that it all depends on you. If you can see a lot of different consequences or choices that you would feel comfortable doing, offer up anything that you think you would feel comfortable and possible doing. The more choices, I think, the better. Although I do think when people are overwhelmed with choice, then the dialogue gets away from what you're actually going to be able to do to resolve it and more into the minutia. And what you want to do is be really clear and really direct. And most of the time, I think that although 4 different options might be available, there's usually 1 or 2 best options, and I would start with there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I just thought I would ask that question.
No, that's a great question. I'm actually glad you brought that up because I am someone who can get lost in choice and who also wants to bring up a lot of choices for people, but usually there are 1 or 2 best choices in a scenario. So start with those and then you can move on to more. So specific evidence and consequences or boundaries help to give you confidence to back up your communication. So the reason why you want to give a consequence is you want to create very clear and specific boundaries of what you're willing to and what you're not willing to do. And by stating these quite early in the conversation, you're being very effective because you're not allowing the other person to stray away from what your message is. You're staying more on topic and you're getting right to the resolution. So this is another example of using consequences in a dialogue. So the conflict here is a director needs to teach more class hours.
Loren, a teacher has resigned. We need you to take on his class.
I can do that. However, I will need the day off on Fridays for planning and grading extra classwork.
I will look at the schedule and see how I can accommodate your request.
Yeah, so this is a situation that actually happened to me. And instead of immediately just saying, I can do it, no problem, I'm here for you, that's not the route that I took because I'd read a little bit about this effective communication. I realized that something was urgent and it needed to be done, that the classes were going to have to resume the next day, but I also realized that this administrator had a lot of other faculty members that they could have looked at. I wasn't sure if I was the first person. I wasn't sure if anyone else was consulted. So I thought as someone who is going to be taking on this extra work, I deserved to have more information and more idea of what was going on so that I could make the best choice. So building firm consequences. Firm consequences are very important. Sometimes you're going to need to stand firm in your consequence, or else you'll build up resentment. Now, a firm consequence is one that you decide, this is my line in the sand, I'm not going to cross this, this is what I need, and you try to convince the other person to work around that. So in order to build a firm consequence, you need to plan a course of action. What are you willing to do? Offer a choice. Again, I can't tell you how important it is to make sure that it's choice-oriented consequences. So choice-oriented boundaries. Make sure that the other person feels that they have agency, that they're a part of the resolution, and that they are being involved in the solution process. And ask the other person to make the choice. Allow the other person to take ownership of their decision. Again, not only does it include them in the process, but it gives them a sense of accountability for what they're doing.
So Loren, I have a quick question for you about the last slide. So I'm personally the type of person, especially if I'm in something that feels like it's going to be a conflict, it's like my mind goes blank and I can't ever think. Like, you said to think of, stand firm on the consequences and do all those things. And seriously, my mind is completely blank. So I'm just wondering if what you think about the idea of saying, let me think about it, or let me get back to you, or kind of to give yourself some time, to buy some time. What's that like as a tactic?
I think that's a great tactic. And what you're doing right there is giving a consequence. The consequence is I need more time.
Okay.
I need more space to think about it. Thank you for considering me, but I would prefer it if I could have a few hours to think about this. How much time can you give me? There you go. You've already offered up a non-committal thing, but it is a choice. You're saying what your boundary is. Your firm consequence there is that you need time to make the decision. You're not going to do it right now for this person. You're not going to give them an immediate yes without thinking about it. And then you also gave them the choice. How much time can you give me?
Okay, excellent.
No idea how they're going to respond to that. They could say, oh, don't worry about it. Let me just ask somebody else. And then all of a sudden, it's done. You haven't said yes to something you don't want to commit to. You've bought yourself some time. They're going to go around and ask other people. So yeah, just that it doesn't have to be a yes or a no choice. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because a firm consequence is really just what are you willing to do?
Excellent.
Thank you. And my favorite thing to do is it's up to you. This is a really firm consequence. And this is what you do when you reach kind of the end of the line and how you're going to communicate and what your consequence is going to be. You say, this is what I'm willing to do. Now it's up to you to make a choice. So using the phrase, it's up to you, allows the other person to make up his or her own mind about the situation. Again, you're basically throwing the ball to the other person. This is what I'm willing to do. How are you going to react to that? It sets a personal boundary for what is acceptable to you. You've made up your mind about what you think you can handle. It gives the other person the opportunity to bring up other resolutions, to see that you're not going to budge, that this is important and it's serious and it's an opinion that you want to be respected. And it's also not an ultimatum, it's a choice. Every time you say something like it's up to you at the end, you are giving the person a choice. It's not the end of the line. It's not, I'm not doing it. It's giving the other person the opportunity to reflect about the decisions that you've given them, the choices that you have provided. So we're going to look at another dialogue using it's up to you. So in this conflict, the director needs you to teach more teaching hours. It's the same conflict, just with different dialogue.
Loren, a teacher's resigned. We need you to take on his class.
I can do that. However, I will need the day off on Fridays for planning and grading extra work.
I'm not sure right now if I can accommodate your request.
I understand. However, I need that extra planning time. So it's up to you. So in this, you can see at the very end that I validated the other person. I understand you. I see what you're saying. I know that you are not able to accommodate my request right now. But you're also putting your firm consequence. I will need that extra time to plan. It's important to me that I have extra time because I'm being assigned extra work. And then you're offering up the choice. It's up to you. This does not mean that you're saying no. This does not mean that you're saying yes. It means that you're giving the other person the opportunity to find another resolution or choose what you've provided. So the director can either find someone else who can teach and doesn't request the extra hours. They can look at the schedule and see how they can accommodate extra hours, or they can find another solution. But you've made your feelings and what you're willing to do very clear. So we're going to go over some advice for staying confident while you're in conflict, because conflict obviously brings up a lot of emotions. When you're having difficult conversations like this, especially the one with the director, where you're dealing with somebody who you respect, and you're in a culture where respecting another person, people with titles above you, people with experience above you, people with age above you, it's important that you stay confident and that you stay grounded in your opinions and that you just don't concede blindly. Because this will make you host a lot of resentment. It will make you put yourself into situations that you don't want to be in continuously and in a pattern, and it's going to just make you very resentful about the choices that you've made. And that doesn't make you feel good. So the first advice here is just pick your battles. If a person starts becoming aggressive, just walk away from the situation. If the person becomes angry, they start to get hot, they're starting to get bothered, they are talking very quickly, they've raised their tone and started to be boisterous and take up more space in the room. These are all just tactics that people use to try to get their own way. They're often tactics that children and adolescents use to get their own way. So it's not a very professional or a very adult way of talking with another person. So if this starts to happen, just walk away, leave the conversation, and you can tell somebody, oh, we can talk about this another time. I see that you're becoming frustrated, or I'd prefer to talk about this in another time when we're both more calm. These are different ways to just get out of the battle, pick the battle. Also, not every single conflict needs to be resolved with deep communication. Sometimes you'll be able to resolve the problem within the first couple steps, just getting clear on the facts and getting your evidence and finding out the specifics, like in the previous communication dialogues, where we brought up the conversation between the coworkers, where one was handing in late work. That was very easily and quickly resolved by just asking the other person why the work was late. So pick your battles and see what you want to really fight for. See where you can benefit. Sometimes conceding or giving in to the person will directly benefit you in the long run. So if that's the case, it'll be really beneficial to you to just give in a little bit. You're not going to win every single fight, and sometimes in an argument or in a conflict situation, you can actually gain things if you concede on one end. For example, in the dialogue between the director and the teacher about teaching extra hours, if I did eventually agree to those hours, but the teacher couldn't give me extra time, I could either ask for overtime pay, because it's what I'm entitled to. I need to be paid for what I'm worth, for our fundamental human rights in the beginning, or I could get in writing that I will have reduced hours, compensated hours in the next term or the next schedule. So instead of teaching 15 hours like I need to do for my contract, or 20 hours, depending on your thing, maybe you can get it reduced. Just make sure that you get that in writing and that other people are aware of this so that the person can't go back on it. But you also want to pick a benefit that's going to directly benefit you. You want to make sure that what you're getting out of it is really personal to you, really helps you in a professional way or in a monetary way. The other thing you can do to feel confident in a situation is getting emotionally grounded. And what I mean by emotionally grounded is in conflict situations, oftentimes you might feel yourself getting emotional, you might get a little hot, you might get nervous, you might feel a little unease. So these are just different ways that you can bring your body down to a place that is very neutral, very calm, because this is the best way to approach somebody, just from like a neutral, happy, mutually beneficial position. And that's grounded. So the first thing I would suggest is taking deep belly breaths. So if you see something happening or you need to talk to somebody and you're a little nervous about it, just take some deep breaths. So you want to breathe in from the belly and out through your nose. So I invite everybody to just try that really quickly. Take a big breath and inhale here. Just take a big breath in and out through your nose. In, feel the belly come up and out through your nose. You can see, even just trying that a couple times, you already feel a little bit cooler, you already feel a little bit more relaxed, and this is a great way that you can just hack your nervous system and just stay grounded, get calm. Another thing you can do is focus on being soft on the person and tough on the issue. I've mentioned this before, but make sure that your focus is on the issue and the conflict you have is with the issue and not with the person. The person is a human being that have all those wonderful fundamental rights I discussed earlier, and they deserve the time and the space to have their own thoughts and opinions discussed. They also have tons of emotions and feelings, just like we do. So try to focus on the issue and not on the person. Also, when you're going into your discussion, be committed to fairness, reason, and professionalism. You are a professional, you're there to do a job, and treat the other person as you'd want to be treated. Offer up suggestions and consequences that are fair, that are thoughtful, that are reasonable, and more times than not, you will get a fair, reasonable, and thoughtful response. Most people do not want to be in conflict. Most people prefer to be in a peaceful setting. They want to resolve the issue, especially in professional settings. So just keep that in mind, that ultimately you're both probably working towards that same neutral, amenable goal. And always relate back to your facts and evidence. If you have a really strong foundation of good facts and good evidence, you know what the problem is, you're really clear on the specifics of the problem, and you have a thoughtful resolution, there's no reason for you not to be confident going into your communication. There's no reason for you not to feel like what you're saying is just, that it's important, and that it's necessary in order to resolve the conflict. So the next thing we're going to talk about is body language. So I've noticed in some of my research that there's certain types of body language that we all use to relay confidence to another person. So the first one is direct eye contact. This shows the person that you care about what is being discussed. So when you're talking with somebody, make sure you look them in the eyes, you give them nice direct eye contact, you're not fiddling with your hands or looking away. Especially in Western culture, that often conveys that you don't care about them, you don't care what's being said, you're being ignored, what you're saying is not important. So it's important to show eye contact, be present, be attentive to the other person. The second one is a boundary gesture. I've noticed this a lot. People sometimes do it instinctively and naturally, but it's basically creating a physical shield. So you'll just put your arm up like a little bit like this, like you have kind of a little bit of armor in front of you, and extend it out about halfway in front of you. Your palm is slightly tilted downward, and you just make this gesture while you're talking. You might notice this a lot in other people when they're making points. There's a lot of people that use their hands. Some people use it all the way up here, or they define things like this. But if you want to be confident in your decisions and confident about what you're talking about, you can just keep doing this type of a gesture right in front of you and accentuate your points by just holding there. It also creates a physical space so that the person knows that there's a boundary here between you. The other one is the power stance. So this is standing with your feet shoulder width apart. You keep your neck nice and long. You stand up straight. You roll your shoulders back, and you just look like you're in power and in control. You're standing up tall. You're proud. You're not slouched. You're not confident. You're not looking down at yourself. Keep yourself upright, tall. Again, you're showing that you're attentive, that you're present, that your body is important, that you're committed to what you're saying. These are all little body language gestures that you can do that just shows that you have confidence. So let's start the poll, Trisha. Which ones do you use most often?
Excellent. I will start the poll right now for everyone to participate. Some people did say already, they voted in the chat box, but hopefully they'll transfer that over to the poll so we can see that as well.
Put it in the chat box. I would love to hear what you have to say.
Number one.
Yeah.
What was said. So let's see, direct eye contact. Wow, that is what most people use, is number one. Let's see, we'll give it a few more minutes here. It is interesting. The power stance is not very popular. I think the power stance can feel a little awkward if you're not used to it, like you're being a little bit Wonder Woman-ish or Superman-like. You know, I'm sure that that's one reason it makes you feel confident, but maybe it doesn't come as natural as the direct eye contact. I don't know.
True. I also like power stances sometimes, especially as a woman, if I'm in a situation with men or older men, because it just shows like a clear boundary, like I'm here, I'm taking up space, I deserve to be in this spot. And it can just be intimidating. I know I had a director that was an older man. I was living in a context where there was a lot of deference towards older men. And it was just really important for me that I matched his kind of power stance. He always stood very tall when he talked to me. So I tried to match his so that he knew that I was serious. I wasn't a little girl. I wasn't a child. I'm here, I'm taking up space in the room. What I have to say is important as well.
I think that's interesting that you said match his. So I'm going to end the poll now and share the results, see what we came up with.
Overwhelmingly direct eye contact. And I do realize that there are certain situations or contexts where giving direct eye contact all the time is not encouraged. But if you're talking with Western people, or if it's appropriate in your culture to make direct eye contact, I agree with everyone here that this is one of the easiest and best ways to show that you're confident. You're listening to the other person, you're there, and you're engaged in the conversation. Another thing about direct eye contact is make sure that you don't overdo it. You don't need to look somebody down, stare through their soul. Make sure that you're blinking a little bit, even if you're nervous, just wet your eyes. Having too direct eye contact, not blinking and seeming almost robotic or fake can be disingenuous. Communicating effectively, get the butt out. So avoid using but when you're talking in these dialogue type situations. This can be a hard habit to break. I know it was for me when I started doing it, but I realized that after I stopped using but as a transition or as a hedging word in my dialogues, that it kind of reframed how my statements were received. So, but is a type of formulaic speech that signals to other people that there's going to be a conflict or there's going to be something you're going to bring up that might be conflicting to what they are saying or what they're doing. And but is just a word that helps them to anticipate that. Instead, we're going to look at other words that you can use instead of but. so that it takes out that anticipation from the but and allows the person to actually hear what you're offering. So if you look at this first sentence here, I hear what you're saying, but I can't do that. You can already hear it in my voice as I'm saying it, but you know that what's coming next is going to be in conflict. If you try it with some of these words, it completely changes how it's delivered. So I hear what you're saying, however, I can't do that. I hear what you're saying, and I can't do that. I hear what you're saying, I can't do that. I hear what you're saying, nevertheless, I can't do that. By just taking out that but, you've given more power and authenticity to what you're saying, and you don't let the other person have the advantage of that but where they know that something is going to change on the other side of it. These are really, really easy ones that you can incorporate that usually work. I've heard other people just tell me, just take out the but completely. Don't use a transition word, just say, I hear what you're saying, and then I can't do that. I find that to be a little bit too direct. So I use however a lot, I use and a lot. Are there any that you use that you would like to put in the chat box? Has anyone ever tried this before?
I will participate because I had a professor once that mentioned that. And this professor said to use and, which is on your list. What I really appreciate about your list is it has a lot of options. But for my story, I chose to stop using but as much as I could in situations where I knew, like things like that. I hear what you're saying, and then put in and there, and I can't do that. And it really does change the dynamic. And it's amazing because it stops, because but has such a negative connotation to it. Like you said, it just automatically can even tell in the tone, but, whereas and sounds much more positive, much more. And like our participant before talked about being more positive. That's one way you can do that is by using words like and or thus or, so that's my story. We don't have any on the chat right now. So
that's fine. We'll go on to the next part. So the next thing we're going to talk about is assertive commands. There are going to be times or situations where a person might become aggressive in conflict. And as I mentioned earlier, the best thing you can do if someone becomes overly aggressive in a conflict is just to leave the conflict. Leave it right there, walk away, say that you will come back to the conversation at another time when you're both more cooled down. But you're going to start seeing signs of another person becoming more agitated by how they speak. So when people feel threatened, they start to escalate their tone. They'll get larger, they'll start to make their words quicker, they will start to get louder, their register goes up, sometimes their register might even go down. For me, I feel like when I start to get upset, I go way up here and I get really high. Other people might go lower and get more angry and become more guttural. So either way, you're going to see a big change there. So one thing you can do when this is happening is use an assertive tone to calm down the situation. The best thing you can do is meet a person that is going in an escalation zone and just meet them with calmness. Go back to your deep breathing. Go back to, okay, I'm not attacking the person. I'm talking about the subject. I'm not attacking the person. I'm attacking the topic. So just keep those things in the back of your mind. Deep breathe. Be clear, confident, and grounded. Go back to those grounding tools. Explain exactly where you're coming from. I don't like this. I understand what you're saying. I see that this is making you upset. How can we get back to conflict resolution? Another little language trick that I learned from the book was emphasizing vowel sounds in the words. So if someone's really starting to get upset, they're really agitated, you might need to use really direct, really simple language, emphasizing the vowel sounds to get them to calm down, to get them to stop the escalation of their tone. So you might notice it when I say no, 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 no. I've put up my barrier gesture. I'm stopping it. This is not happening. No. And by emphasizing that O sound, it's very clear what I'm saying. I'm using that O sound to really get across that I'm serious, that this is emphatic. Please stop. Please stop. I've emphasized the vowel sounds. It makes it more direct. It makes it very clear. This is a good way to de-escalate. Not now. Oh, I want to talk about this more. Not now. We're both very worked up. I can see you're upset. Not now. We'll come back to it at another time when we're both more calm. So we've come towards the end of the webinar now. I would like to just hear a little bit of feedback from you. What topics did you find most useful in this webinar? I have a list here. This is a multi-choice poll, so you can choose more than one. But please let me know, what do you think? And if you have any other information, please feel free to write it in the chat box.
Okay, I just launched the poll. I'll say, for me, one of the greatest things I've learned is this idea of being soft on the person, tough on the issue. I really, really love that, because I think it reminds me of the humanity of the other person, and that I should respect them. And it's all, and because of the way it's phrased, soft on the person, hard on the issue, it's almost like a mantra that you can kind of repeat if you're in a situation or you're thinking about something. Soft on the person, hard on the issue, soft on the person, hard on the issue, or something like that. So that's my favorite.
I hear what you're
all
saying,
of these
Trisha, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you. Okay, let's see what people are saying here. We've got a fair number. People are still, the poll's still going quite rapidly, so we'll give it a few more seconds.
Yeah, one of the big things.
Go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, sure. One of the biggest things that I learned was about not using generalizations, because as I had mentioned before, when I had conflicts with people, I'm prone to hyperbole in my life. So I would say things like, oh, well, this is always how you react. This is always what you do. Or you never listen to me. You never hear what I'm saying. You never do this. That is so unproductive. And again, it's not really getting to the issue, because the issue isn't that they're always doing something. It's that the thing that they are doing upsets me. So it's not true that the person always acts like that. But when they do, it's triggering for me and it hurts. So if I can stay soft on the person and say, I really appreciate you, and I know you're trying to help, and I would really like to see this change. That is such a different phrase than you're always wrong. You never do this. And it comes from a much more compassionate place. And I feel like when people feel like you're extending compassion, and you're not just lumping them into what one action that they did and letting that action represent them, they're so much more willing to change and help.
Okay, I just shared the poll so that
Great.
we can see.
Great. I see a lot of people agreed with you that soft on the person, tough on the issue is definitely a mantra some are taking away. And learning to discuss using evidence and consequences, I think, is also fantastic. And just noticing that you're allowed to have those barriers, and it's really important to get your facts first and then decide for yourself what you're going to do and what you want to do, and allow the other person the choice to be a part of that resolution process. So thank you. Trisha? Okay, would you like to talk about the next webinar that's coming up?
Yes, so we're, as Loren said, we're coming to the end, but as part of that, we would like to announce the next webinar. I'm really excited about this. It's called Pronunciation Perfection, Enhancing Intelligibly and Comprehensibility. I'm sorry, I need my glasses. I can't read, that's too small. But it's by Joshua Bernstein, and he is going to speak to us about this on February 6th at 6 o'clock, the same time. We hope to see you all there. It should be fantastic. And the flyer will go out in the follow-up emails, but I will also post it on all the different platforms that I use to communicate with you guys. Okay?
Absolutely. And thank you all for your participation today. I really appreciated you all taking the time to listen in this evening. If you'd like to contact me, this is the best email to get me at. So if you want to take the time right now to take a little screenshot, or I'm sure Trisha would mind sharing my email address. This is the one that I use for my ELF work as an English language fellow. And if you'd like to receive a PDF of the file of the book that I mentioned as my source material, I'd be happy to share that with you all. So thank you so much for listening in and taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, just to finish up, one last thing is we very much appreciate everybody tuning in and that there will be a follow-up email going out, and it will have information of where you can catch this online on the RELO Bangkok YouTube station. Yeah, that's right. Channel. Anyway, and I did put at the beginning a link to the Facebook page, so you can go on the Facebook page and you can follow us there, or the AUA Facebook page and follow them to see what exciting events are coming next. Thank you again for coming tonight, everyone. And thank you, Loren, for such a fantastic job. We're getting a lot of comments here on the side about how much people appreciate it, how practical it was, how useful, and they're really excited about it. So
Great.
Thank you very much, Loren, and we will see you next time in February. Hope everybody can make it. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.